Mike here. You're watching Yukon Scout Restoration. In this video, I will install the crankshaft in the 152 Comanche engine block. This is not a how-to video. It's a how I do video. I hope you like it. Let's get to work. If you want to help, please subscribe to Yukon Scout Restoration. Mike Morrow, over and out. When I brought this Scout home, I thought I would get it running, fix it up a bit, and do a spray-on paint job. Then I got the Scout bug. Now everything has to be restored to Concours condition. I can't help it. I dream about bolts with IH stamped on their heads. In the beginning, I took a few pictures and no videos. I just have a few photos to introduce the engine video series. The first time I opened the hood, there were telltale signs that someone had been trying to start the engine. So I did a compression test. After squirting oil in the cylinders, the lowest reading I got was 4 psi and the highest 26 psi. Then I pulled the engine. Next, I removed the oil pan. Someone had already rolled in new main bearings, so I plastic gauged them. Not good. The crank needed turning, if I could find engine bearings. The oil pump was badly worn. When I pulled the head and ran my finger up a cylinder wall, there was a wave at the top of the cylinder. At this point, I didn't even need to measure the cylinders. They obviously needed to be bored, if I could find oversized pistons. Normally, I would toss an engine in this condition, but at the time, I did not have another 152 Comanche engine. And even if I found another engine, there was a good chance that it would need a lot of work anyway. So I decided to try to find all the parts to rebuild this engine. 2 years later, I had the parts and I got the block back from the machine shop. That's the beginning of my 152 Comanche rebuild series. Let's get to work. So I just got the 152 engine back from the machine shop. So I'm going to unwrap it and have a look and pick it up and put it on the engine stand. So at the back of the engine here, you can see the new cam bearing. You can see the new cam bearing on the front too. I had it bored 40 over, so you can see there's a nice crosshatch in those cylinders. Pretty good. Everything looks really good. We have 2 3/4 frost plugs. One goes in each end of the block. And the first one goes in the front of the block beside the water pump. The second one goes in the rear of the block. There it is, nice and straight. On the starter side of the engine, we have 3 frost plug holes that take 1 5/8, but this one closest to the front is for the block heater. So the starter motor is here. So I'm going to install 2 1 5/8 frost plugs here. Two. Thread sealer on all the plugs. This square drive plug goes in the back of the block, and I will put thread sealant on it before I install it. Thread sealant or tape will help prevent leakage through the threads. I usually turn these plugs until they are flush. This petcock goes on the starter side of the block. Two more little pipe thread plugs on the oil filter side to the rear of the block, here and here. And of course, they get a little bit of thread sealer on them. And a 5/16 open end wrench works on them. This is the oil pressure sensor, 3 terminals. This terminal here, one that's alone, is the ground. So these other 2 terminals should have no continuity because the switch is normally open. See, no continuity. If I touch my leads together, I have continuity. The 2 terminals, no continuity, right? Now, I have it connected to the 2 terminals. When I add air pressure, you see that? Continuity, because the switch closes. Open, closed. Open, closed. So that means that the sensor is working. It's a very simple mechanical device. So this hole in the block, which is on the oil filter side below the fuel pump, goes to an oil gallery from the center main bearing. So that's where I'm going to install the oil pressure sensor with a little bit of thread sealer, utilizing my sensor socket. While I'm doing that, I'll just check this screw. I don't think it's been out. It seems to be tight. This is where the oil filter mounts, fuel pump, and these are the 3 holes for the motor mount brackets. Here is the engine identification number. It says 4152, and then the engine serial number 172013. This is above the oil filter. So if you want to know if you've got a 152 or a 196, that's where you look. The new main bearings are 10 under. This is the spec for the bearing spread. So the spec for the uninstalled main bearing spread is 2.972. Look at that. So it's right on. I'm just going to check them all in case one is out to lunch. The center main bearing has thrusts on the sides to control crankshaft end play. Therefore, there is no reason to check the crush on this bearing. All the other ones are fine, springy. 2.972 from here to here on the outside. When the bearing is installed and torqued down, this distance will be 30 thousandths less. The reason for this is to ultimately end up with a perfectly round bore, fitting the crank perfectly, not tight in one area and loose in another. Now that I'm satisfied that I've got the correct bearing crush, I'm going to install the bearings in the crank and torque it down and plastic gauge it and see what I've got for bearing clearance. As I mentioned, the crankshaft has been turned down 10 thou. So there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In order to get an accurate torque,
I'm dipping the bolts in oil. You can't get an accurate torque reading on a dry bolt. So the main bearing torque is 75 to 80. I will do that in increments. So my first round will be 20 foot-pounds. I'll try 40 foot-pounds. $60 foot-pounds. So after torquing them all to 80 foot-pounds, I removed the number 2 main bearing cap, and here it is, the plastic gauge, and it's pretty well 2,000, which is just perfect. So I'm going to just clean that plastic gauge off there, put this cap back on, and torque it, and check another one. Just put a little bit of motor oil on there. So now I'm checking number 1. Main bearing journal. It's important for me to show what we've got. Once again, we've got a bang on 2,000, which is just excellent. Retorque number 1 to 80 in increments. This is number 3, main bearing cap. And we can see we're going to be getting another 2,000, as we should. And that's what it is. It's 2,000. Everything should be consistent because the crank was just turned down by 10 thousandths of an inch. So I'll just put that one back on. That's number 3. This is number 4. We've got a pretty good 2,000. This is just excellent. Tighten this in increments up to 80. The last one, the rear main. We'll have a look at that. Here's the rear main. And we have another 2,000, which is perfect. And I like the fact that they're all consistently the same spec. So they did a really good job of turning my crank. Rear main bearing and seal. So I'm just going to put a little bit extra on the sides here. I'm going to put the main bearing in place. I'm using 2 5/16 drill bit for an alignment. I'd like to put the rear seal in first. So we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to put a very thin, very thin film of this Permatex forming gasket on here. Rear seal in there. I lubricated it, nicely lubricated it. It's in all the way. There. These are aligned. bolts. Using a round file with the blunt end, gently snug down this bearing. There, that's the way it's supposed to be. These top lips, they just protrude a little bit. So torque that to 80 in increments. Before I do the final torque, I'm going to put the balancer on here and turn the crank. Everything's turning beautifully. I wonder how we are for end play. So, the crankshaft end play specification is 3 to 8 thou. So I've got a dial indicator on here. It's on a counterweight because I couldn't put it on the front like I'd like to. But it gives me a good idea. Okay, now it's at 40. This way. There it is. Three thou. We're getting around 3 thou, which is perfect. Now I can do my final torque of 85 foot-pounds. Turn it a little bit. Turns beautifully. I'm very happy. I have 2 thou bearing clearance and 3 thou in play. I'll just do that torque one more time. Very good. The makings of a good engine.
In conclusion, I'm happy with the main bearing clearances. This is a good start. My next video will be engine 2, camshaft installation. I hope you like it. If you want to help, please subscribe to Yukon Scout Restoration. It's free. Mike Morrow, over and out.